And because of that, I wish I knew that before, because I would have done this a long time ago. A couple of years ago, I bought my 2014 Audi R8, flew out to Austin, Texas, road tripped it back. There were a few things that I was not expecting. These are the 3 things I wish I knew before I bought my Audi R8. The Audi R8 is considered by many to be an entry-level supercar, and so you might expect supercar maintenance prices, right? And of course, I did expect that, or at least I thought I expected that. The most I'd ever previously paid for an oil change was about $200-ish. So I thought, yeah, it's gonna be more expensive, of course. But when I got to the dealer, I was in for a shock. So the vehicle that I bought, I considered it to be the best R8 that was available at the time that was a V8. And in my research, it looked like the V8 was going to be less expensive overall maintenance-wise compared to the V10, which played a factor because I was already spending way more than I've ever spent on a vehicle before buying this. Now, of course, you can find Audi R8s for cheap, like $60,000. They may have 70, 80,000 miles on them. They're gonna be an R-tronic transmission, which I personally don't like. They may have a branded title. There's all sorts of reasons why you can find a cheap Audi R8. Me personally, I would not suggest that. So I went out and did the opposite. I bought a 16,000 mile 2014 Audi R8 with great maintenance records. It seemed like they had taken meticulous care of this vehicle. Well, only putting 16,000 miles on it over a 8-year period doesn't sound terrible. It is still something that can cause other wear. Now, the vehicle had just had an oil change before they put it up for sale, so you can imagine my surprise when I was still in the state of Texas before I got a low oil warning light. And if you're familiar with VW and Audi products, this really doesn't come as any surprise. But for me, I honestly was kind of surprised because it just had an oil change. And I do know that these do consume oil. I did not realize how much. And I've had the dealer check it out, and of course they say it's all normal. It's within the factory specifications. So I have since had to start carrying a quart of oil with me wherever I go, because it's not always the easiest to find a European blend synthetic oil. And this low oil light happened at like 10 o'clock at night. So most auto parts stores weren't open. I was, however, able to find a Walmart, which did have the right specification of oil. Now, the vehicle performed flawlessly for some time, but I wanted to get it looked at by the dealer once I got home. So I took it in. I'd already put several thousand miles on it. I said, hey, let's do another oil change on this. And that's when the sticker shock came in. Yes, my first oil change rang up to $1,500. That's right, $1,500. I was not expecting this. And of course, they had other maintenance items that I needed to take care of as well. Based on age, I needed new spark plugs. Well, that of course added a pretty penny as well. But I did it. I bit the bullet and said, okay, I want to take care of this. It's a supercar. Let's do this. Well, one very common issue with R8s, unfortunately, is AC compressors. And that one happened to me too.
Not again!
Now, the AC compressor is lodged up against the firewall at the front of the engine, and the Audi service manual says you have to drop the motor to get this out. Now, fortunate for me, I did purchase an aftermarket warranty for this vehicle. And after much fighting back and forth with the warranty company, they finally decided to cover it. But the dealer rate on this was $8,800. And I live in a place where they don't have incredibly high labor rates, say like either of the coasts do, but it's still added up in the labor department. So here I was thinking, okay, I bought a really clean example. I shouldn't have these issues this quickly. But deferred maintenance is such a thing, and cars sitting is also a thing. So very excitedly, I took the vehicle down to California and took my vehicle to Ghost Works, where I bought wheels from Will Collette. They were Vossen wheels that he had had previously on his R8. And as I'm driving home, I noticed the tires started rubbing. Yes, I bought new wheels. They're a different offset. Okay, maybe there's some rubbing. So I hit up Will and said, hey, did you experience any rubbing on your car? Because his was lowered, mine is not. He's like, no, I've never had an issue. Well, turns out it was my shocks. And most people that have an Audi R8 end up replacing the stock shocks with coilovers, because the cost difference is significant. When I got back home, I took it to the dealer, had them quote out just 2 front shocks, which were the ones that seemed to be having an issue. A $6,500 quote later, I said, okay, I need to see what other options are out there. And I was able to discover a company based in Europe that rebuilds the factory shocks and charges significantly less, more in the range of about $1,000 a shock instead of $2,500 a shock, parts only. So I ordered a pair of those, and I've always wanted to stick with the dealer because it's a supercar. But then I discovered the lovely folks at 218 Auto. Ricky and Mark are former Audi techs that got sick of the dealership politics and opened their own place. So they'd worked on these cars before, and their labor rate was quite a bit less. So I took it there, had them replace the front shocks, and it was a great experience. Well, not long after that, yep, the rear shocks started going out. So again, had to pull out the credit card and say, oh, let's do this, and replace the rear shocks with, again, factory shocks so that I can keep the magnetic ride, which I really do like. So again, a couple $1,000s later, here we are, we have new rear shocks, but the reason I actually brought the vehicle in was because of a knocking sound in the front right suspension. I thought, okay, maybe these refurbished shocks didn't work out the way I thought. No, right at the tie rod end, the steering rack was making noise. So even though I was going through 218 Auto and they charge lower rates, the parts, again, were incredibly expensive. I had a quote of over $4,000. Now mind you, this is in addition to more than I've ever paid for a car payment before. Even though I put a significant amount down, this is a payment that most people would consider to be a mortgage. And of course, in this time, I've also managed to replace a couple sets of tires. And I understand they are wide tires, but they're not nearly as wide as my previous Dodge Viper, and they seem to catch nails better than any vehicle that I've ever had. So I've had to replace multiple sets of tires. Fortunately, with the steering rack, I did find a refurbished one again and saved several $1,000s in that regard. And as this video comes out, it's currently at 218 Auto getting that steering rack replaced. So the long-winded version of number 1 and number 2 things that I wish I knew before buying the R8 was the maintenance costs and the parts costs. Again, coming from a Dodge Viper that already had expensive parts because they were discontinued, I thought I was prepared. But no, my credit card was not prepared at all. Do I regret the choice? Of course not. Because the number 3 thing that I wish I knew before I bought my R8, it helps significantly with 1 and 2. With owning a supercar, you open doors that you never thought you would open before. Suddenly people think, okay, this guy's got life figured out. He's been able to afford a very expensive car, so he must know something. But the perception is that you do know something. Suddenly, I had more people who want to know me. Owning a supercar has opened up so many doors and introduced me to so many people that I otherwise would have never met. And because of that, I wish I knew that before, because I would have done this a long time ago. I would have skipped right over owning multiple cars and gone straight to owning one supercar. So for that, I really wish I would have known beforehand what this would have done. And yes, it is a bit of faking it until you make it. And I don't suggest you rent one and try and pass it off as your own, but actually owning one, it's led me to charity events, to business meetings, to making friends, and finding people that are honestly doing better than I am. And frankly, those are the type of people you want to hang out with if you want to keep leveling up your life. In summary, number 1 thing I wish I knew is the maintenance costs. Number 2, the cost of parts for this vehicle. And number 3, the doors it would open. Is there anything you think I missed in this? Make sure to drop a comment below. And since you're here, check out some of my other videos, and I will catch you on the next one.